I found. It's a big red button. That's pretty cool. That's the emergency button that we press in case of an emergency. And, oh boy! Look what else I found. I have buttons on my shirt. And guess what else? I have buttons on my coat, too. I've got all sorts of buttons today. And that's perfect because today is National Button Day. It's a day where we talk about all the different kinds of buttons that we have. So I've got little buttons on my shirt. I've got big buttons on my coat. There are even buttons that we press. So you know what? I think it's about time for a button story time. But first, we have to sing our story time song. Hands go up, hands come down. I can turn myself around. I can stand on one shoe. I can listen, so can you. Let's sit down, I'll show you how. Story time is starting now. It's time for story time. Okay, are you ready for a button story time? There are so many different kinds of buttons. There are big buttons and little buttons, buttons that go on clothes, buttons that you fasten, buttons that you press. There are so many different kinds of buttons. So today for our story, we have a story called The Magical, Mystical, Marvelous Coat. The Magical, Mystical, Marvelous Coat. Now I like to wonder before I read my stories. So let's wonder about this story we're going to read. The Magical, Mystical, Marvelous Coat. We know that our story time today is a story time about buttons. So you know what? If this is a story about a coat, I bet you that this coat is going to have some buttons that go with it. And you know what? If the coat is magical and mystical and marvelous, maybe the buttons are magical and mystical and marvelous too. But we're going to have to read the story to find out. So let's start our story. The Magical, Mystical, Marvelous Coat. The coat that I wear from the fall to the spring is my chunkiest, funkiest, favorite thing. But the 6 reasons why it's a magical coat are the buttons that go from the heel to the throat. The first one says cold, and the second says warm. The third plays a tune that would calm any storm. The fourth is a star, and the fifth is a stone, and the sixth is a doll with a coat like my own. So this special coat has 6 magic buttons. I went out on Monday to see what I'd see, and I saw a young giant who was hot as could be. "The trouble," he said, "with being long in the leg is the sun fries my head as though it were an egg." He's so tall, he gets hot. He's up there next to the sun. So I bit off my button, the one that said cold, and I handed it up for his hot hand to hold. So the little girl gave one of her buttons to the giant, one of her magic buttons. What do you think is going to happen? And when he cooled down, he began to emote. What a megacoliferous, marvelous coat! I went out on Tuesday to see what I'd see, and I saw a white swan lying under a tree. Her feathers were frozen, all smothered in snow. Though she struggled to fly, her poor wings wouldn't go. So I bit off my button, the one that said warm. And before long the swan was in fine flying form. As she took to the air, the first song in her throat was, "What a magnificent, marvelous coat!" She's going around giving away her magic buttons to people. I went out on Wednesday to see what I'd see, and I saw a great ship sailing over the sea. The rain blew so hard and the wind blew so high that the captain and crew began loudly to cry. Uh-oh. They're having a rough storm in their boat. So I bit off my button that played a sweet tune, and its beautiful song calmed the storm very soon. Then the captain and crew, as away they did float, sang, "Ahoy to that maritime, marvelous coat!" So far she's given away 3 magic buttons. The one that makes you cold, the one that makes you hot, and the one that plays music. She only has 3 buttons left on her magic coat. I went out on Thursday to see what I'd see, and I saw an old wizard who whispered to me, "Since I wore out my wand, at my spells I'm a flop. All I've left is a stick with no magic on top." So I bit off my button, the one like a star, and the way that it stuck to that stick was bizarre. She's given away another button to the wizard. When the Wiz waved his wand, in the heavens it wrote, "What a magical, mystical, marvelous coat!" I went out on Friday to see what I'd see, and I saw a snake searching something for tea. "I'll slip down this burrow," he hissed with a grin. And 3 frightened bunnies squealed, "Don't let him in!" So I bit off my button, the one like a stone, and I rolled it in front of the hole with a groan. What do you think? Is the snake gonna eat the bunnies? The snake slithered off the 3 bunnies, I quote, said, "What a most meal-stopping, marvelous coat!" I went out on Saturday to see what I'd see, and I saw a small elf who seemed sad as could be. "I've searched down below," he sighed, "and up above, but I can't find a smallish somebody to love." So I bit off my button, the dolly herself. And she yawned, and she stretched, and she smiled at the elf. So the little girl's now given away all 6 of her magic buttons. The coat doesn't have any buttons left. As they danced in the twilight, they sang with one note, "What a matchmaking, marrying, marvelous coat!" On Sunday, my mother and father said, "Child, to lose all 6 buttons seems wanton and wild." Uh-oh, she's in trouble because she gave away all of her buttons. Before I could answer, the pockets they tried, and 6 magic buttons were waiting inside. So we sold back the cold, and we sewed back the warm, and we sewed back the tune that could calm any storm. We sewed back the star, and we sewed back the stone, and we sewed back the doll with the coat like my own. As I buttoned my coat, Mother opened the door, and in came a crowd I'd seen somewhere before. Who do you think could be? Who was at the door? Some sailors, a giant, a swan, and an elf, 3 rabbits, 1 whiz, and my dolly herself. All of the people that the little girl helped came back. We kissed in the kitchen, we hugged in the hall, and we skipped up the stairs as we sang one and all. It's fashion, it's couture, it's high and it's haute, the megacoliferous, truly meltificent, meal-stopping, magical, maritime, marrying, mostly just marvelous coat. Wow, that was a pretty special coat. Those 6 magic buttons, when she gave them away, it helped so many people, so that they all came back at the end to say thank you for helping them. That was a really neat coat. I wish I had a magical coat like that. But you know what? I don't need magic buttons. There are so many kinds of buttons already in the world. I bet I've got some buttons that I can find all over the place. Can you think of something that has buttons? You know, there's so many different kinds of buttons, sometimes I get them confused. Maybe you can help me. I want to see if I can go find some different kinds of buttons. Why don't you come along and we'll see what we can find, okay? Let's go.
I'm looking for some buttons. Do you see any buttons? Oh yeah! This lady has buttons on her jacket. There are some on the sleeves and some to fasten it. Buttons!
I'm looking for buttons. Do you see something with buttons? Oh, look! The TV remote has all sorts of buttons. That's how you turn the TV on and off and change the volume and change the channel. Buttons.
I'm looking for buttons. Do you see any buttons on this arcade game? Oh yeah! There are buttons on the front. That's how you play the game, by pressing the buttons.
I'm looking for something with buttons. Do you see any buttons? Oh, look! The microwave has buttons. That's how you cook your food. You press the buttons to stop and start, and for different amounts of time. Buttons.
I'm looking for buttons. Do you see a button? Oh, it's the search button on the computer. You press the button when you want to look something up. I'm looking for buttons. Do you see a button? Oh, it's a belly button. That's silly. I'm looking for buttons. Do you see a button? There's a button. That's the kind of button you put on your clothes for decoration when you want to express something. Cool! We found all the buttons! Great job, you guys. But now it's time for our very special button dance. Are you ready? Let's head back to the library.
Okay, it is time for our button dance. This is a super fun dance that I hope you'll enjoy. But this dance isn't one that we stand up and dance around the room with. This dance is one we have to do sitting down. So if you want to sit on the floor, if you want to find a chair, we need to do this dance sitting down. This is our button dance. And in this dance we're going to start with one button. Just one button. And it's a button that we have to push. So we are going to take one finger and we are going to push the button. Pretend it's a nice elevator button or a nice emergency button that we are going to push. And then guess what? We have two buttons. And we are going to press our buttons with both hands. Just like this. But then guess what? We have three buttons. Well, we've run out of hands. So we're going to have to use two hands and a foot to press three buttons. We need both hands and a foot. And then, guess what? We have four buttons. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Both hands and both feet for pressing our buttons. And guess what? There are five buttons. So what else do we have to press the button with? We've got two hands, we've got 2 feet, and then we're going to use our nose. So we're pressing buttons with our hands and our feet and our nose. Oh my goodness, so many buttons. Are you ready for our button dance? Let's get started.
My name is Don and I worked in a button factory. I had a boss and she got meaner by the year. One day she asked,
"Hey Don, are you busy?"
I said no, then she said,
"Push this button with your right finger."
Oh, this is a very easy job. One pointer finger on the right hand. Push a button. What could be easier than this?
my name is Don and I worked in a button factory. I had a boss and she got meaner by the year. One day she
"Hey
asked,
Don, are you busy?"
I said no, then she said,
"Push this button with your left finger."
Oh no, I think she's starting to get mean. That's one pointer finger on each hand. How many buttons is that?
my name is Don and I worked in a button factory. I had a boss and she got meaner by the year. One day she asked,
"Hey Don, are you busy?"
I said no, then she said,
"Push this button with your right foot."
Uh-oh, that's 2 hands and 1 foot. Oh no, how many buttons is that altogether?
My name is Don and I worked in a button factory. I had a boss and she got meaner by the year. One day she asked,
Hey, Don, are you busy?
I said no, then she said,
Push this button with your left foot. Ah!
Uh-oh, that's 2 hands plus 2 feet. How many buttons is that altogether?
Busy.
my name is Don and I worked in a button factory. I had a boss and she got meaner by the year. One day she asked,
Hey, Don, are you busy?
I said no, then she said,
Push this button with your nose.
What? A nose? That's 1 nose plus 2 hands and 2 feet. How many buttons is that? Nobody can do that all day.
my name is Don and I worked in a button factory. I had a boss and she got weirder by the year. One day she asked,
Hey, Don, are you
I
busy?
said yes, I'm busy, they're busy, aren't you looking?
You are? Oh, I see. Good job, Don, and everyone else, you did a really good job. Bye.
Thank you for coming to my story time. I hope you had fun. I know I sure did. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.